Welcome back, folks, for our final day of the Game Devs of Color Expo speaker series. I hope you got some good rest, and I hope that you are looking forward to getting some real solid, concrete game dev advice today. Pretty solid running theme through our talk. This first one will help you if you are maybe just getting started. Also, if you've been here a while, I learned something new. The thing about being in indie game dev is that it's intimidating, also exciting. Try and bring your game to life. And those feelings multiply when you show up maybe at an event like this, maybe if you've got a build or a demo you're trying to show. But the cool thing about the indie space is how many people are willing to lend a hand, who want to be supportive, who just want to see other indies be successful. I find it really encouraging to be in this kind of atmosphere and to feel like everybody wants each other to succeed, are willing to share the information to help make that happen. That's what this next panel is, and that's what this next panelist is going to do. Kai Nyame Abbey is the founder of Studio Hitsuji, which has been around for 4 years, and you still may not have heard of them, but I'm going to let you hear in the talk why. That said, in Kai's almost decade-long career in indie development, she has shown her work at places like the Getty Museum, Tokyo Game Show, GDC, E3, and more. If you are looking for some tips on how to get your indie studio off the ground, or maybe keep it off the ground, you might want to get your notebooks ready. Coming from Oakland, California, please welcome Kai Nyame Abbey.
All right, let's get started. My name is Kai, and I'm going to be talking about the Indie Studio Survival Guide. We've only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to give you as much as I can in that period. We're not going to be able to get to all of the things that I'd love to share with everyone, but there's going to be some links at the end, so if people want to research more or they want to reach out, my contact info is in there, and you can totally take a look at those resources at the end. All right, so a little bit about me. My name is Kai Nyame Abbey. I'm a studio director and producer for the studio I founded in 2021, which is Studio Hitsuji. And I've been in indie for 10 years. Some of that has been successes, some of that has been failures, but I've been around for a little while now, and there's a lot that I'd like to share in terms of how to stay consistent and how to stay successful as an indie in the industry, especially with the funding climate the way that it is right now. A little bit about my company. Studio Hitsuji is an indie game studio and tools developer that was founded out of the Niantic Black Developers Initiative in 2021. You may not have heard of us before. That's because we don't have any publicly released games. However, we've been around for about 4 years now, and in that time, we've managed to stay, above water. We've managed to find opportunities, contract work, funding, and in that, I'd like to share some of the tools that we've used to stay afloat while we have the time and while we've had the privilege to be able to be creative in the indie space and create the things that we're passionate about. So, as I said, we only have 15 minutes, but a little bit of what I'd like to talk about today are a couple of these different things. The first being vulnerability and understanding how you being a unique individual and you being a unique person in the indie space is part of what is the strongest point to being able to be successful and being able to grow your company and stay in a space where you can be recognized and stay in a space where you can enjoy creating the things that you want to create. The second piece here is about support. It's really, really important for you to be able to have a community and to be able to find the resources that you need as an indie developer. You don't have all the time in the world if you're a founder or a co-founder or you have a small team. You have a finite number of hours, and your development community really is your lifeline. Having that pooled resource, that pooled information about when things are happening, the opportunities that are available, and all of that is going to make you, stronger being able to give you sort of that sanity and that give you that assurance that, you know, you're not missing out on the opportunities that are available because the people around you are also sharing and looking out for those same pieces of information. The last one on the note of opportunities is opportunities. We do only have 15 minutes, and there's never a world in which I'm going to be able to share all of the opportunities that exist and all of the advice that I could give in such a short period of time. So there is a section at the end that's just like, these are the things that you can use. These are the things that I found helpful. These are the things that have led to funding opportunities, to contract opportunities, to stability for my indie company. And hopefully some of that will also be useful to you. All right. So let's talk a little bit about vulnerability and talking about, you know, the unique portions of your team and the unique portions of the world that you're building and the brand that you're building. You've probably heard, you know, work on your brand, you know, be unique, be yourself. And there's lots of talks about it across GDC, Game Devs of Color. All the talks tell everyone that's an indie, oh, you have to be unique to, you know, sell your game or sell your brand. But the thing that I want to talk about in terms of your identity and in terms of vulnerability in, you know, your creative exploits and who you are is there's sort of a trap here of being able to be an indie and be, you know, financially in the positive, where if you find, you know, a contract or you find an opportunity that's not quite what you care about, it can lead to sort of this snowballing effect where you are running into more opportunities along the same line of the ones you've previously had, and it can actually push you away from your creative vision. So I think the thing that's really important here is understanding the balance of this is a financial opportunity. It'll help us be successful, but also this is why we make games. This is why we're passionate. This is where our strengths lie. This is where our talent is. And making things and cultivating opportunities in that space of where you're already passionate and where you already have your skill set is actually going to make so much more of an impact than taking the extra random job, being able to tell your story. If your team is wonderful at narrative, if your team has, you know, the storytelling ability and the character design, you know, finding jobs or finding contracts or pitching projects that aren't what you're passionate about is going to push you into a space where you're going to be getting more jobs outside of that realm. And it can be really easy as an indie. It's happened to me. It's happened to a lot of people I know where all of a sudden you look 2, 3 years later and you're just a contract company. You're not actually making things for yourself. You're not actually being true to your vision and your passions. And so understanding that there is that balance of finding the work that can sustain you on a financial level, but also understanding that you have skills and those skills within your passions are what you're most valued for. The things that you have that you sort of bring to the table in a meaningful way are going to be the things that, you know, make you unique, make you, you know, enjoyable in terms of the projects you make, the stories that you tell. And, you know, it's really, really important to be able to be true to yourself. And it's really, really important to understand that every work that you do under your studio as a team sort of compounds in the world's perception of your projects. And so being able to stay true to that is really, really important in being able to stay healthy as a team, stay healthy creatively, and also just sort of understand where you can fit, you know, your productivity and your creativity and your work into this world that has so many games in it already. All right, the second piece here is support. There are a lot of indie devs out there, you know, across languages, across geography, across gender and sexuality. And like, you can't exist in a world in a vacuum. And if you're a small team, you don't have all the time in the world. And it can be really stressful if you're a CEO or, you know, you do biz dev or you're trying to keep your team together, keep your team afloat, to feel like you don't have access to the opportunities that you need to keep your studio, you know, around. And part of that can be mitigated by having a strong support system, having a strong developer community, and also being able to reach out and not only acquire new resources, but share the resources you have so that your community as a whole can grow together. So there's a couple different places that the developer community exists. You probably know a bunch of them, but I want to talk about the specific uses of each of these different types of communities and where you might find them. The first is sort of public social spaces. You have your Twitter, you have your Mastodon, your Blue Sky, or whatever. And this is a really good place to share resources, to hear, oh, there's an event that has submissions open. I should submit to that. Being able to follow people in your community and share resources amongst developers is really, really important. On the next section, you have internal communities, so private Discords, private Slacks, things that are often based around technical skills or affinity groups. This is a really great place to find support in helping understand, what else people are making, being able to reach out to another indie developer that's making something similar to you and do a collaboration. This is a place where you can hone your technical skills, and you can also really just like find people to talk to that are sharing the same trials that you are, that are running through the same, gauntlet. And so being able to find these spaces and join them and like actively engage is really what makes not only a healthy community, but creates a space where if you need help, you can reach out and there are people that are there that are ready to respond and really excited to, help you find the answers that you need. The last one is sort of event-based spaces. You have things like GDC, you have like things like Game Devs of Color Expo, you have IGDA chapters, you have things that are either tied to physical locations or tied to yearly events. And this is another really great space in terms of finding community, finding places to pitch, finding people to talk to that know where you can pitch. And these are not to be discounted. There's quite a few variations of each of these, and they actually intersect in some really interesting ways. Sometimes there's a Discord server for, Black voices in gaming, or there's a Twitter community for, producers in games. And so there's a lot of ways in which being around one community can lead to the other. I don't recommend one type of communication over another, but it is really important to understand how much social bandwidth you have, which style of communication is easiest for you, how best you can contribute, and then also like who is there that is talking about the things that you care about. So if you're running into a certain type of problem and you find other people are talking about that, that might be a good community for you. Having that support network, having the reminders of, oh, have you submitted your talk yet? Having, the late night conversations about, hey, I'm trying to figure out if I should, solo publish or I should publish with, a larger publisher. What should I do? Having these conversations in these spaces is a place where you can find someone to, confirm or deny the voice in the back of your head that's telling you, oh, I think this will go great, but I'm concerned. Or I think this is going to go terrible, but what if there's another way? And so being able to have that community is really, really integral to not only having your successful studio, but like being able to, as a community, have the stability and have access to the resources that we need to be able to succeed in making games and, funding the games that we want to see in the world. Okay, I may have blasted through this a little bit too quickly, but that just means we have more time for talking through some of the opportunities and, some of the resources that I've collected over time. And then also there's a little bit at the end about some of the people that have been part of my community that have, even more information. Maybe some of this has spoken to you, maybe some of this hasn't spoken to you, but if you're an indie developer and you're looking for resources, hopefully something on this list catches your eyes. Hopefully something here is going to give you the answer to some of the questions that you've been asking, or sort of soothe some of the worries that you've had in your heart. So I will preface this with all of these things are things that I've used for Studio Hitsuji or previous indie studios. Some of these have turned into, direct access to contract work. Some of this has turned into direct access to opportunity and funding. And I do really, really recommend that you take a look at these because they are some of the things that have, given me stability as an indie developer, but also given me a leg to stand on to be able to let my team and let my company do the things that we want to do and tell the stories we want to tell. So the first one here might look familiar. If you have ever submitted to a festival, if you've ever taken a look at like an online event and you said, oh man, I totally wish I sort of submitted to that. My game is perfect for, that event. There's a calendar for that. Akupara in the Indie Houses festival submissions calendar is pretty widely known, but if you somehow missed the memo, they have a calendar for almost every single industry event. They have notifications for submission deadlines. They have information about the cost, the location, whether it's online, whether it's hybrid. And like all of this gives the sort of peace of mind as a developer and as an indie that you're not missing something. If you're subscribed to the calendar and you're thinking about, oh, we're releasing, in 6 months, what do we start showing at? How do we start getting the word out? This is a really amazing place to be able to look at and sort of plan your release schedule or plan your big announcement. And having access to all this information truly has been invaluable for acquiring contracts, for being able to know what events I can pitch for funding at. And they have it as a Google Calendar. They have it as a spreadsheet. They have it here on the Indie Houses website. Definitely go check it out. The next one, and I could have a whole separate talk on this, is pitch decks. If you're publishing with a publisher or you're hoping to publish, not in a solo context, you need a pitch deck. There's lots of talks about it on the internet. It's an art, right? And it can be nerve-wracking if you're an indie, this is your first game, this is your indie, you're an indie, this is your second game. Maybe it's your third game and you're like, I don't even know how the first two ended up working so well. Having examples of pitch decks that have been previously funded is very, very important. Understanding how people are getting funding, how much money they're asking for, understanding the level of visual fidelity, how much of a prototype you need. All of these questions can sort of eat away at, if you're a founder or a director, those questions have to get answered. And the little imposter syndrome, the voice in the back of your head, right? Having that confirmation of, I am at the benchmark I need to be at to, take this opportunity is, it's wonderful. And so Glitch has successfully funded indie pitch deck examples on their website. A couple different scales, actually, different sizes of games, different levels of fidelity. Some are cozy games, some are roguelikes, across the board, right? And so being able to look at these decks and even potentially like reach out to some of the people who have made these decks, like having access to this information in a public setting has been really, really rewarding and really helpful, at least in my experience, in preparation for pitching, to be able to acquire funding and to be able to understand what the industry standard is if you've been working on, your prototype for many months. All right, a couple things here that are really helpful, but aren't just text. If you are an auditory learner, or you want a YouTube video or you want a podcast, I really recommend Future Friends podcast. They have a lot of really amazing other indies that are doing guest speaking, and having access to that knowledge of developers that have way more experience than you, people who have gone through failed projects, through successful projects, who have stuff about trailers, who have stuff about how to release on Steam, how to release on consoles. All of this is super helpful if you want a format of information that you can listen, in the back while you're working, or you want sort of a style of communication or a style of information that's a little bit different. I highly recommend them. I still use Derek Liu's trailer information, so definitely check this out. The last one, if you're a visual learner, I do put some of these in that are more bite-sized because honestly, you don't always have multiple hours to spend on biz dev every single day. If you look at some of these, you may have even seen this online, but if you haven't, Valadria or Matt Hackett's Steam Dev cheat sheet and like all of the short bite-sized visuals and infographics about how to manage your presence on Steam, how to set up your trailers so that they're appealing on different platforms. Being able to have this information in bite-sized chunks really, really can help out if you don't have a social media manager. Maybe you're just two people, a programmer and an artist, but like having access to this information can take a prototype game that gets maybe 10 downloads on Steam and like actually give you a chance to market your game, actually give you a chance to have, a little bit more of that financial success and a little bit more of that sort of security in understanding the tactics of why things work, and how best you can emulate that on your projects. Matt Hackett has a book. A lot of them, a lot of the content in the books are infographic based. A lot of it's very visual. If you're a visual learner or you just want a little bit of bite-sized content, definitely take a look at some of these. I think he also has threads on Twitter and elsewhere on the internet. So if you don't want to have a physical book or an ebook, you just want to be able to look at some of these, he posts them for free online as well. All right. That's probably as much as I have time for today. But I think the really, really important thing here is that community and being your most authentic self is how you can stay engaged in the community, and staying engaged in the community is how you get opportunities. And so if you're your most authentic self and you focus on the content that you are most passionate about and that you have the technical skill set to be able to achieve, you have the ability to find the funding, to be able to find the opportunities that'll give you the long-term stability and not just the quick burst of cash. If you have community and you have people surrounding you that are facing the same challenges that you are, that are asking the same questions, and you're learning together and sharing resources together, you have that support. It'll save you those long nights of being stressed, of being concerned or worried. So having that is really, really integral. And as a community, as we grow in Game Devs of Color Expo, elsewhere in the world, the more we share, the better the community can be. And the more access to resources that people have from all walks of life, the more amazing games get to be made and the more amazing projects get to be funded. And so I come from a place of privilege where I had access to a lot of these resources. I've had access to a lot of these communities. And, it's not something that should be kept behind closed doors. And it's not something that we should be saying, oh, this is a secret. It's something that we should be talking about and sharing with community, and that community should be large enough to include everyone and, accessible enough for everyone to be able to access. And so if you have the ability to join these communities and you have the ability to bring your skill sets to share that information, something that you have is going to be integral to another indie dev. Something that another indie dev has might be the key to unlocking the things that you need. So stay safe out there, and hopefully this talk has been helpful. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference, and I can't wait to hear about all the cool indie games that you guys make.
Thank you for that talk, Kai. I definitely took some notes on that one. I really like this idea of vulnerability as a core skill for growth. Being comfortable with vulnerability means being comfortable with risk, being comfortable with tough conversations, being comfortable with knowing what you want or how you feel, expressing that to others. It does also sometimes mean licking your wounds when things don't work out the way that you wanted. But the great thing about the indie space is that you don't have to go it alone. Setbacks don't have to be the end. You can see that there are all kinds of people willing to share their knowledge in hopes that you get to make the thing that's in your heart. Kai, I hope you've been able to do that, and Thank you for sharing this knowledge with us. If you'd like to keep up with Kai, you can find her on Twitter at Nyame Dev, that's Nyame Dev, or you can find her on LinkedIn at Kai Nyame A.